for a woman in finance. Crypto, fight for amber eyes. I'm looking for a woman in finance. Crypto, fight for amber eyes. I'm looking for a woman in finance. Crypto, fight for amber eyes. I'm looking for a woman in finance. Crypto, fight for amber eyes. I'm looking for a woman in finance. Crypto, fight for amber eyes. I'm looking for a woman in finance. Crypto, fight for amber eyes. Uncharted. Let's go.
Welcome to Uncharted, the podcast that rips a map right out of your hands and forces you to think differently about money, crypto, psychology, and success. I'm Lisa Ann Edwards, a crypto trader, investor, and entrepreneur with 25 years in traditional markets and crypto now. With 5 multi-million-dollar businesses under my belt, I've navigated bull runs, crashes, scams, pumps, and dumps. And I'm here to give you the brutal truth about building wealth in a world that never stops changing. But that's not all. Before crypto, I lived in a world where money wasn't real. Hollywood. Well, the Australian version. And as a former talent agent and now a writer and film producer, I've seen firsthand how power and influence and manipulation shape the way we think about success. The game is rigged, but only if you play by their rules. In this show, we go deep into the psychology of money, expose how the system really works, and give you the tools to build your own wealth. And because life isn't just about numbers, we'll take a few detours into travel, luxury, and hacking the system to live life on your terms. So if you're ready to break free from financial lies, trading myths, mindset traps that are keeping you broke, you're in the right place. This is Uncharted. Let's get started. So today I'm going to think about and ask about what is truth and at what cost. History has shown us that those who challenge the narrative often pay the ultimate price. So I like to look at price. But in an age of misinformation, manipulation, and mass surveillance, how do we separate fact from fiction? So welcome back to Uncharted, where we dive into the hidden truths, the uncomfortable realities, and the stories that shake the foundation of what we believe to be true. I'm Lisa, and today we're exploring a topic that has shaped empires, toppled governments, and changed the course of history: the price of truth. From whistleblowers to revolutionaries to everyday people who dared to question authority, one thing remains constant: telling the truth often has consequences. So who are some of the martyrs of truth? Throughout history, those who spoke out against power faced exile, imprisonment, or worse. So look at Galileo, who defied the Catholic Church by proving the earth revolved around the sun. Edward Snowden, who exposed global surveillance and became a fugitive. And let's not forget Julian Assange, locked in a battle between free press and state control. So the pattern is clear. Truth is dangerous. But why? Because truth disrupts. It dismantles control. It challenges those in power. And in a world where narratives are carefully constructed, those who expose them become threats. So take Saint Valentine. Most know his name, but few know the real story. He wasn't just a saint of love. He was a rebel priest. So during his reign, the Emperor Claudius II, he defied law banning marriages for young soldiers. And so he secretly performed these weddings in the name of love and personal freedom. For his act of defiance, he was arrested and thrown into prison. According to legend, while in prison, Valentine befriended the jailer's blind daughter and miraculously restored her sight. Can't speak. Before his execution, he left her a note, "From your Valentine," which is believed to be the origin of the tradition. So ultimately, he was tortured and beheaded on February 14, 269 AD. And for his defiance against the emperor, his crime standing up to love and against the will of the empire. Over time, this execution was romanticized into Valentine's Day. But his real story was about sacrifice, defiance, and the cost of standing up for what you believe in. So when truth becomes more dangerous than lies, Sometimes truth can be more harmful than silence, especially when systems are involved and deeply entrenched. Revealing uncomfortable truths can cause more damage than they benefit, and that comes from exposure. In these cases, silence or careful management of the truth can be seen as a form of responsible leadership, not cowardice. So we live in a world where public trust is fragile, societies are already polarized, and the wrong truth at the wrong time can cause mass panic, destabilize political systems, destroy the social fabric. So while whistleblowing and transparency are often hailed as moral imperatives, the unintended consequences of exposing sensitive information can be disastrous, especially when those revelations disrupt or break down societal institutions without offering feasible path forward. But then, if truth must sometimes be managed, who decides what should and shouldn't be revealed? Who controls the narrative of reality? So what about the truth in relationships? Truth isn't just dangerous in politics and history, it's just as risky in our personal lives, especially in relationships. We're told honesty is the foundation of love, but what happens when telling the truth might destroy it? So have you ever done something that could maybe end a relationship? Maybe you crossed a boundary, maybe you betrayed trust, maybe you made a decision in a moment that now you have to decide, do I tell the truth or do I risk losing everything? Or do you bury it, hoping that it never comes to light? So how do you face it? How do you confess? Because that confession might just be something that the person you love might break. The key is to ownership. No excuses, no shifting blame, raw, unfiltered truth, and then accepting the consequences. Because at the end of the day, real love can survive the truth, but it can't survive a lie. So what are your lies? So what are the lies that we tell, and why do we tell them? Not all truths are created equal. Some can shake a relationship to the core, while others just chip away at it over time. So why are these things? What are the things we need to hide? Infidelity, betrayal. Maybe it's a one-time mistake. Maybe it's been happening for months. Either way, telling your partner could mean the end of everything. But living with the secret, it changes you. It forces the lie to cover up your tracks, to pretend, and eventually it unravels. What about financial dishonesty? Did you make a big purchase without telling your partner? Hide the debt, drain the savings account. Money is one of the leading causes of relationship breakdowns. So when financial dishonesty comes to light, it's not just about money, it's about broken trust. What about breaking a promise? Maybe you swore you'd quit smoking, cut back on drinking, stick to a diet. Maybe you told your partner you'd never talk to your ex again. Then you slip up. Did you come clean and risk disappointment, or did you keep it all to yourself, thinking it was harmless? So let's think about secret eating or other small betrayals. You're both on a weight loss journey together, committed to a goal. Then late at night, you go to the fridge, you're craving that extra burger, the whole pizza, the top of ice cream. We've all had Ben & Jerry's. You can't just finish it. It seems small, but when your honesty is part of your commitment, even the little things matter. It's about more than food. It's about self-control, discipline, and whether your word means anything. So emotional cheating. Maybe you didn't physically cheat, but you've been messaging someone, your ex, in a way that crosses the line. You tell yourself it's harmless, but deep down, you know your partner wouldn't see it that way. So emotional intimacy with someone else is just as dangerous as physical infidelity. Hiding your feelings, maybe you're unhappy in the relationship, but you don't want to say anything. So that's a little lie there. You act like everything is fine because you don't want to hurt your partner and have the difficult conversation, but silence can be just as damaging as a lie. So what happens if you don't tell the truth? What is the price here? The reality is truth, just doesn't have consequences. Just like whistleblowers risk exile or imprisonment, telling the truth in a relationship risks rejection, heartbreak, and sometimes the end of everything you built together. But actions have consequences always. And here's the other side of what happens if you don't tell the truth. Lies rot a relationship from the inside out. You might think you're protecting your partner, but you're really just protecting yourself. The weight of deception, it grows, it changes you until one day the truth comes out and the damage is even worse. So every secret you keep becomes a test. Can you live with the weight of what you've done? Or can you look your partner in the eye knowing what you're hiding? Can you truly love someone while keeping part of yourself locked away? So how to confess the truth when you know it could break everything? How do you face it? How do you confess something that might break the person you love? The key is ownership. Be honest with your excuses. No shifting the blame. No, I was drunk. No, it just happened. Take responsibility for your actions. Accountability is a big thing here. Accept the consequences. Telling the truth doesn't mean you get to control how the other person reacts. If they need space, give it to them. If they walk away, let them. You don't get to demand forgiveness. Don't just say you're sorry. Words are easy, actions matter. So if you're sorry, prove it through changed behavior. Prepare for the fallout. The truth might have a high price and it might hurt. It might break trust, but if your relationship is real and trust is built on something deeper than surface level and comfort, then honesty, even painful honesty, is the only way forward. So lies often lead to resentment towards yourself especially. So when you hide something, it doesn't just sit there, it festers. The guilt can become unbearable, and over time you start resenting yourself for what you did and for not having the courage to tell the truth. The self-loathing can manifest in destructive ways, pushing your partner away, self-sabotaging, or even acting out of frustration. You know, we all get angry sometimes. And that resentment towards your partner, ironically the person who's been deceived, often is the first to feel the resentment. The person keeping the secret is. You might start blaming your partner for why you had the lie in the first place. If you were more understanding, I wouldn't have to hide this. If you weren't so strict about money and so controlling, I wouldn't have to spend behind your back. These rationalizations shift responsibility, making it easier to carry the lie. But deep down, the resentment is really about your own choices. So resentment from your partner once they find out. So once the truth comes out, the price of that is your partner may feel like they never really knew you. They'll replay the conversation in their mind over and over, questioning everything. Their trust in you will be shattered. And even if they want to forgive, they may struggle with the feeling of being deceived more than the actual offense itself. So that's where their resentment begins. Resentment for the time they spent believing a lie, for the emotional labor they put into the relationship that wasn't honest. Even if the lie never comes to the light, the wedge it forms, you start pulling away, emotionally, physically detracting. You stop making eye contact as much, and the affection fades. So conversations feel forced. Why? Because deception creates emotional isolation, and isolation breeds resentment. So truth and resentment are a trade-off. You tell the truth up front and you risk the consequences, you pay the price, but you allow for healing and honesty and to rebuild trust. Hide the truth, you may maintain temporary peace, but over time, deception creates emotional distance, guilt, and a ticking time bomb of resentment that can destroy everything. Resentment isn't born in a single lie, it's born in the walls that we keep the lie hidden. So let's have a look at truth versus power, the Bitcoin parallel. I'm going to bring it back to business. So one of the most revolutionary acts of Truth in recent history wasn't spoken, it was coded. Satoshi Nakamoto created Bitcoin as a direct response to the lies of central banking, financial manipulation. This came out of 2008. A currency that can't be controlled, censored, or inflated in any way. So that's a system, it's a threat to the system. And just like those who spoke the truth in the past, the system has fought back. They attack, they regulate, they call it a bubble, but it survives because truth, real truth, always finds a way. But here's where things get even more interesting, because there's one man who spent years claiming to be the creator of Bitcoin, and yet the system refuses to acknowledge him. Dr. Craig Wright, the man who claims to be Satoshi Nakamoto, has spent years stating with absolute certainty that he is Satoshi Nakamoto. He's taken his claim to the courts, to the media, he's got patents, and to the industry itself. But why is this truth so fiercely rejected? Exchanges refuse to list his version of Bitcoin, BSV, Bitcoin Satoshi Vision. Major players dismiss him, and sometimes without debate. Every time he pushes his claim, his response isn't just skepticism, it's outright hostility. But why? If he were lying, wouldn't it be easy enough for him to dismiss him completely? Wouldn't the proof be black and white instead of we get legal battles, censorship, and near complete industry blackout of his work? What's more threatening, a fraudster claiming to be Satoshi, or the real Satoshi saying things the system doesn't want you to hear? So what if he's telling the truth? Consider this, if Craig Wright truly is Satoshi, then the entire narrative around Bitcoin will shift. What if Bitcoin Core, BTC, isn't the true Bitcoin, but a manipulated version of Satoshi's vision? What if Bitcoin was never meant to be a store of value, but a scalable, usable global payments network, exactly what BSV aims to be? And what if the biggest exchanges, the largest investors, and the centralized powerhouses that control the crypto industry don't actually want the real Bitcoin to succeed? And here's the thing. History has always treated truth tellers like liars. So, is he lying? Galileo was condemned for proving the earth revolved around the sun. Nikola Tesla was ridiculed for innovations that would have disrupted entire industry. Edward Snowden was exiled for exposing mass surveillance. So if Craig Wright was Satoshi Nakamoto, would that world even allow that truth to surface? Or is the system too invested in keeping the truth buried? Because here's the real question. If Wright is a fraud, why does the system fight so hard to silence him instead of simply proving him wrong? I'm going to let you think about that for a little bit. And what does it cost to know the truth? So here's the real question. If the truth is dangerous, is ignorance safer? In a world where reality is manipulated, do we want to see behind the curtain, even if it costs everything? Think of the Wizard of Oz. Because the price of truth is high, but what is the price of deception? Even higher. So Dr. Gabor Mate, a renowned expert in trauma and mind, body and health, has spent years researching how unspoken truths, suppressed emotions, and internalized stress manifest in the body. His work shows that when we deny reality, whether through self-deception or societal pressure, we don't just suffer emotionally, we suffer physically. The body doesn't forget it. It holds on to the toxicity of deception, stress, and unresolved trauma, converting it into chronic pain, autoimmune diseases, and even cancer. So the very act of lying to ourselves or others forces the nervous system into a prolonged state of stress and an endless fight or flight cycle, and it wears us down over time. But what about when someone does tell the truth and no one believes them. Resentment builds. The injustice of being unheard, dismissed, or even ridiculed creates a deep psychological wound. So when someone repeatedly tells the truth but is met with skepticism, gaslighting, outright denial, they start to feel like their reality itself is being questioned or erased. So this is where bitterness, emotional isolation take root. So the frustration festers into resentment, and that resentment over time doesn't just stay in the mind, it seeps into the body. Studies suggest that long-term resentment and emotional suppression can contribute to inflammatory disease, heart conditions, chronic stress disorders. So what happens when a person is forced to carry the burden of truth alone? They either shut down or they withdraw from relationships and they become numb to the world. Or they fight louder, angrier, and the system labels them as crazy for refusing to let the truth die. Because the price of deception isn't just about the loss of trust, it's about the slow, silent erosion of the body, mind, and soul. So let's look at the paradox of perception. How do we know when the truth is a lie and when the lie has become the truth? Let's think about that. First, the truth gets distorted over time. So a truth, when repeated, twisted, and manipulated, can evolve into a widely accepted lie. History is full of these distortions. Think of Rome, propaganda. Governments have rewritten history in favour of narratives. We get media spin. The same event can be portrayed as righteous or evil, depending who controls the story. And social conditioning. When a falsehood is told often enough, people accept it as reality. The world is flat. Smoking is healthy. Bitcoin's a scam. And at what point does that original truth become lost? When does that belief override the fact? And think of this as a game of Chinese whispers. I think that's now called telephone. I'm not sure if that's politically correct anymore. But where the message starts as one thing and it's built through repetition, distortion, and personal interpretation, and it becomes something entirely different. So here's how it happens in real life. So distortion through retelling, a fact starts as a simple and clear fact. Each person who repeats it adds, omits, alters details, either intentionally or unintentionally. And over time, the final version is unrecognizable from the original truth. So example from the original truth is Bitcoin is a decentralized peer-to-peer electronic cash system. Distorted over time, Bitcoin is an investment asset. Further distortion, Bitcoin is digital gold. And final version, Bitcoin is a scam, until it comes all back and it starts again. So the message morphs because people interpret and retell it through their own biases, experiences, and agendas. The more people who believe it, the more people it becomes true for. So if an idea spreads widely enough, it no longer needs evidence to be accepted. People assume it must be true because everyone says it is. The original truth is buried beneath layers of misinformation, selective memory, propaganda, Galileo's truth. The earth revolves around the sun. The false consensus at the time, this sun revolves around the earth. So the result was Galileo was labelled a heretic and punished for telling the truth. So how do you stop the Chinese whisper effect? Go back to the original sources instead of relying on the second-hand information. Not always possible. Question narratives that seem too convenient to serve a hidden agenda. Recognize when information is emotionally charged, fear, outrage, hype, and accompany distortions. Look at the crypto market and the FUD that we get. Stay skeptical of anything that's presented as absolute truth because it's often nuanced and complex. So yes, much of what we believe today, whether it's history, finance, politics, or relationships, has likely undergone the Chinese whisper transformation. The real question is, Are you hearing the original message, or are you just hearing the message that survived? But what about the lies that become the truth? Then there's a reverse. A lie that's represented until it becomes reality. This is what happens when enough people believe it. Consensus creates reality, and it's often based on a falsehood. And that's when doubts are removed. If no one questions the lie, it becomes an accepted truth. The lie becomes useful when a falsehood benefits those in power, is projected, reinforced, normalized, and the economy's fine. War is necessary. You need to let us save you. How do you tell the difference? So you test for contradictions. Does the truth hold up under scrutiny, or does it require mental gymnastics to defend? Who benefits if it's a truth? Seems to benefit for a select few. Questions disappropriately. So look at the outliers. Who do these people challenge the narrative have to say? If they are silenced rather than debated, there's something to uncover. So gut instinct versus proof. Feeling that something is true doesn't make it so. Otherwise, just because something is official doesn't mean it's reality. Looking for undeniable proof over personal basis. So when the truth becomes a lie and vice versa, the real danger is when people stop questioning that entirely. So when truth becomes whatever is most convenient to believe, because the truth isn't something we find, it's something we fight to protect. I want to just rewind a bit to this thought. If enough people believe it, it becomes the truth. The price of truth is often determined by numbers, because in society, truth isn't about factuals, it's about consensus. And if one people tells the truth and it contradicts to a widely accepted narrative, they are more likely to be dismissed and labelled as crazy and outright ignored. But if 30 people say the same thing, then it's got credibility, not necessarily because it's true, but because what the majority believes. So why do the numbers influence the truth? So social proof and herd mentality, people assume that if a large number of group believes something, it must be correct. So this is why propaganda, media-controlled narratives are so powerful. The fear of isolation, the lone truth teller, is often attacked and ostracized. So when a movement forms around an idea, it becomes safer and easier to believe. So power struggles decide what's true. Those in power, whether governments, corporations, or media, control the dominant narrative. If a single person is challenging them, then it becomes easy to be silenced. But if enough voices rise, it becomes harder to suppress. So examples of this in action are Bitcoin and decentralization. So when only a few people believed in Bitcoin, and I was there, I know, it was dismissed as nonsense. Now that institutions, millions of investors back it, it's recognized as a legitimate financial revolution. Think of whistleblowers against the establishment. So when a single person exposes corruption, they're often discredited, silenced. Think Julian Assange, Edward Snowden. But if thousands of people amplify the message, it's harder to suppress. So in science and paradigm shift, Galileo's claim that the Earth revolved around the sun was rejected because he was alone. Now it's unquestionable truth, but only because enough people eventually embraced it. So is the truth just a numbers game? Is the price higher? Not always, but in a world where perception shapes reality, numbers influence what people accept as true. This is why falsehoods can thrive, and if they have enough believers, and why some truths take decades or even longer to be accepted. The real danger, the first person to tell the truth often pays the highest price. So the price of truth is directly proportional to what's at stake. The more disruptive a truth is, the higher the cost. So why does the price of truth increase with risk? So the greater the truth, the greater the threat. If a truth challenges power, control, and deeply held beliefs, the pushback is more severe. So small truths, I ate the last cookie, may cause a minor conflict, but truths that expose corruption, deception, or manipulation threaten entire systems, governments, corporations, financial institutions, and even personal relationships. So the cost of exposing the truth: some truths come with a personal loss, reputation, relationships, financial stability, or even freedom. So think about whistleblowers like Edward Snowden, Julian Assange again, and their truth-telling cost their normal lives, and they became exiled and hunted. So in relationships, confessing to infidelity, financial dishonesty, or hidden betrayals can destroy trust permanently. The more that's invested in a lie, the harder the truth is to accept. And if an individual, institution, or an entire society has built a foundation on a falsehood, they will resist the truth at all costs. So let's have a look at central banks versus Bitcoin. Traditional financial institutions have spent centuries controlling money. So the idea of an uncensorable, decentralized currency is a direct threat. The more invested they are in fiat, the harder they fight against Bitcoin's legitimacy. Truth versus comfort. So the more comfortable a lie is, the more people fight to preserve it. The uglier the truth is, the more people will deny it, suppress, or attack those who bring it to light. What determines the price of truth? Is it who threatens it? Individuals, corporations, governments? And what does it disrupt? Personal stability, economic systems, religious beliefs? And how much has been invested in the lie? Is it a slight misconception or an entire societal structure? So whether people are ready to accept it, the timing matters. Sometimes the truth is ahead of time. Truth as a currency itself has value, but the cost is measured by risk, resistance, and sacrifice. The most valuable truths are those that expose the deepest deception, so carry the highest price. The question is, who's willing to pay it? And back to love before I close out. If love in its purest form is truth, the price of truth is love, vulnerability, loss, and sometimes heartbreak. So love and truth are inseparable because real love requires truth to survive, but truth in love isn't always easy. And the greater the love, the higher the cost of truth. The price of truth in love, vulnerability, is to truly love someone. You must be seen as who you are, without the masks, without the lies, without pretending to be something you're not. And that means revealing your deepest fears, flaws, and insecurities, and knowing that other person could reject you. So truth in love demands honesty, but honesty means being open to yourself and any potential pain. So the cost, you risk being hurt, rejected, and abandoned when you reveal your whole truth to someone. And the price of truth in love, accountability, and it just isn't passion, it's commitment, responsibility, and showing up when it's hard to do that. So if you truly love someone, you have to hold yourself accountable for your actions, admit when you've messed up, take responsibility for how you affect them. How many people run from love because they don't want to face themselves in the mirror of truth that love provides? So you have to be willing to grow. So this is going to be the cost to own your mistakes and to do the hard work of becoming better for someone you love. So the price of truth in love is letting go. And sometimes love means telling the truth that could end a relationship. And the hardest truths are the ones that force us to choose between keeping someone and being honest with what we want and need. So telling your partner you don't love them anymore. Admitting to them you've betrayed their trust. Realizing that you're not capable of loving realizing that they're not capable of loving you, I meant to say, and the way you need to be loved. So the people hold on to comfortable lies instead of facing the truth, and that is relationship in ruin in its course. So the price of truth in love can sometimes be letting go of someone you love because the truth won't allow you to stay. The price of truth in love is facing uncomfortable realities. Love isn't always soft. It forces us to see things we'd rather ignore. We are really happy, or are we just attached? Or are we in love, or we're afraid of being alone? Is this love healthy, or is it breaking us? So the hardest truth to face is when love has become a lie and we tell ourselves to avoid the pain. So the cost is the willingness to see love for what it is, not for what we wish it to be. So on my final thought on love, is love worth the price of truth? If love is truth, then love can only survive where truth is allowed to exist. A love built on lies will crumble. A love that hides the truth will be in a love in denial. And a love that embraces the truth, no matter how painful, has the power to transform. So is the price of truth in love worth it? Only if you're ready for a love that's real is it worth it. So I want to hear from you guys. Have you ever questioned something you were told was true only to discover it was a different reality? So drop your thoughts and stories and opinions and comments and tag me, YouTube, social media, Spotify, wherever you see this. Let's start a conversation that no algorithm can silence. And if you found this episode And if you found this episode eye-opening, share it, because it's the only way to fight the narrative and create your own. This is Uncharted. Stay awake, stay curious, and stay dangerous.